The Deep Space Monitoring Station on Mars was having another quiet day. The skeleton crew of 10 humans watched their screens with practiced boredom until the unusual energy readings began appearing near Jupiter. At first, they thought their equipment was malfunctioning. "Control, we're picking up something massive," said the young operator, his eyes fixed on the screen. The energy signatures were unlike anything they had seen before, pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm that defied their understanding. Within hours, the Earth Defense Fleet mobilized its response. The EDF Stellar, humanity's most advanced warship, charged its engines for the journey to Jupiter. Captain Robert James stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the ship's displays. 20 years of space service had prepared him for many things, but not for what they were about to discover. "All systems ready, Captain," his first officer reported. "Jump drives charge." The journey to Jupiter took 3 days, even with their most advanced engines. As they approached the massive gas giant, the crew fell silent. There, against the backdrop of Jupiter's swirling storms, floated hundreds, no, thousands, of ships. They were elegant things, their hulls shimmering with a metallic surface that seemed to change color as they watched. But something was wrong. The alien vessels were drifting, their movements uncontrolled. Some spun slowly in space, while others clustered together in defensive formations. Emergency lights pulsed across their hulls, a universal signal of distress that needed no translation. "Life signs?" Captain James asked, his voice steady despite the historic moment. "Massive readings, sir. Each ship appears to house thousands of beings, but their power signatures are weak and getting weaker." James ordered his communications officer to broadcast on all frequencies. They used every known protocol, even reverting to simple mathematical sequences, the universal language of space. The response, when it came, was unexpected. A hologram materialized on their bridge, showing a creature that looked almost like a tall human, except for its silvery skin and large, dark eyes. Its voice came through their translators, carrying notes of both relief and desperation. "Help, please. Our fleet, stranded. Life support failing. Children aboard." Captain James straightened his uniform, knowing that humanity's first official contact with alien life would be remembered forever. "I am Captain Robert James of the Earth Defense Fleet. We stand ready to assist." The alien's next words sent chills through the bridge crew. "We are the Asteri. Our quantum drives failed during emergency transit. 40,000 ships, 2 million souls. Cannot restart engines. Power failing. Please, help." The situation became clear as they exchanged more information. The Asteri fleet had been fleeing from a cosmic disaster, a chain of artificial wormholes collapsing in their home system. Their emergency jump had saved them from immediate destruction, but had also stranded them here, their advanced technology crippled by some kind of spatial anomaly. James looked at the tactical display, showing the vast fleet of stranded ships. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity had achieved. Yet here they were, powerless, and asking for help. Sometimes, he realized, being less advanced had its advantages. Their simpler technology might just be what saved these people. "This is Captain James to Earth Command," he transmitted. "We have a situation here that's going to need everything we've got, requesting immediate authorization for full rescue operations." As he waited for the response from Earth, James watched the alien ships drift against Jupiter's eternal storms. Humanity had just been thrust onto a much larger stage than they had ever imagined. Their response to this crisis would define them in the eyes of the galaxy. The fate of 2 million aliens now rested in human hands. Captain James smiled slightly, knowing that if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was solving problems that seemed impossible. Earth Command responding, his communications officer announced. "They're saying, 'Whatever you need, Captain. Show them what humanity can do.'" James nodded, already forming plans. "Send word to the fleet. We're going to need every ship we can get. It's time to show the galaxy what humans are made of. The rescue operation was about to begin, and history would never be the same. Commander Kate Miller adjusted her helmet one final time as the airlock cycled. Behind her, a team of 5 specialists waited, each chosen for their expertise. The alien vessel loomed before them, its silver hull towering over their small boarding shuttle. "Remember," Kate said through the comm, "we're here to help. Stay alert but friendly." She had been selected to lead this mission, not just for her technical skills, but for her calm under pressure. Today, she would need both. The alien airlock opened with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor that seemed to shift colors as they walked. Their boots clicked against the metallic floor, the sound echoing strangely in the alien architecture. The air was breathable, according to their sensors, but protocol demanded they keep their suits on for now. Ambassador Gray met them at the inner doorway. The Asteri leaders stood nearly 7 feet tall, their silvery skin catching the emergency lights that flickered throughout the ship. Despite their alien appearance, the worry on their face was all too human. "Welcome aboard the Starlight," Gray said through their translator. "We apologize for the dim lighting. We're conserving power." Kate noticed how the alien's shoulders slumped slightly, a universal sign of exhaustion. "How long have you been stranded?" "By your time measurements, almost 4 months," Gray replied, leading them through corridors where other Asteri watched curiously. "We've lost 37 ships already. Life support failed completely. We couldn't save them." The human team fell silent, the weight of those losses heavy in the air. They passed by what appeared to be a garden chamber, where alien plants wilted in their beds. Children. At least, Kate assumed they were children, being smaller than the adults, huddled with their families, watching the humans pass with large, dark eyes. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Bill from the human team let out a low whistle. The Asteri quantum drive was a marvel of engineering, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend light itself. But now it sat dark and lifeless, like a dead heart in the ship's chest. "The drive uses quantum entanglement to fold space," Gray explained, touching the crystal surface gently. "But something in your solar system, it changed the quantum fields. None of our drives will activate." Bill ran his scanners over the engine, shaking his head. "This technology is way beyond us," he admitted, "but sometimes simpler is better. Our fusion drives might be crude by your standards, but they work anywhere." Kate watched as her team spread out, taking readings and examining systems. The Asteri technology was incredible when it worked, but now these advanced beings were trapped by their own sophistication. "Ambassador," Kate said, "I need to understand exactly what happened. Everything you can tell us about the disaster you were fleeing from." Gray's expression darkened. "We had built a network of artificial wormholes for travel between our colonies, but something went wrong. They began to collapse, creating a chain reaction. We had minutes to evacuate millions. This fleet, these are the ones we could save." The implications hit Kate hard. An entire civilization, reduced to refugees in moments. She looked around the engine room, seeing past the advanced technology to what this really was. A ship full of scared people, running from disaster, their children hungry and their future uncertain. "Commander," one of her team called out, "the life support systems are worse than we thought. The main atmospheric processors are failing. They've got maybe 2 weeks left." 2 weeks. Kate met Gray's eyes and saw the fear there, carefully controlled but present. 2 weeks to save 2 million lives. "Ambassador Gray," she said firmly, "I need you to tell my engineers everything about your systems. No holding back. No technological secrets. If we're going to save your people, we need to understand exactly what we're working with." Gray straightened, meeting her gaze. "Of course, we place our trust in humanity's hands." As her team began their detailed analysis, Kate activated her comm link to Captain James. "Sir, we're going to need every engineer Earth can spare. And we need them yesterday." The response came back immediately. "They're already on their way, Commander. Earth is mobilizing everything we've got." Kate looked at the worried faces around her, human and alien alike. Whatever their differences, they were now united in a race against time. And failure was not an option. Chief Engineer Tom Reed stared at the holographic display, his tired eyes reflecting the complex diagrams floating before him. For 5 straight days, he and his team had been working to understand how human technology could possibly help the stranded Asteri fleet. "It's like trying to power a quantum computer with a steam engine," he muttered, rubbing his temples. The Asteri quantum drives were elegant machines that manipulated the fabric of space itself. Next to them, human fusion technology looked like something from the Stone Age. But that was exactly why it might work. "Look here," Tom said, pointing to a section of the diagram. The engineering bay of the Earth Defense Fleet's main station was crowded with both human and Asteri engineers. "Their technology is too advanced to work in our solar system's quantum field. But our fusion drives don't care about quantum fields. They just burn hot and push hard." An Asteri engineer named Third Light leaned forward, their silver skin reflecting the hologram's glow. "The energy output from your fusion drives is primitive, but stable. If we could channel it through our power systems." "Exactly." Tom snapped his fingers. "We don't need to understand how your quantum drives work. We just need to give your ships enough raw power to maintain life support and basic propulsion." The problem was scale. They needed to modify thousands of ships, and they needed to do it fast. The first life support systems would start failing in less than 2 weeks. In the corner of the bay, a junior engineer named Alex was tinkering with a smaller version of the Asteri power core. She had been quiet for hours, focused entirely on her work. Suddenly, she looked up. "I think I've got something," she called out. The room fell silent as she held up a small device. "Their power crystals can absorb any kind of energy, right? So what if we build a converter? Something that turns our fusion plasma into a form their systems can use." Tom rushed over to her workstation. The device was crude, a mix of human and Asteri parts, held together with what looked like standard welding seams. But as they watched, she connected it to a small fusion generator. The Asteri power crystal began to glow. "It's working," Third Light exclaimed, checking readings on their own devices. "The crystal is accepting the energy conversion. It's not as efficient as our quantum drives, but it works," Tom finished. "And we can build these converters using standard materials." He turned to face the room. "How quickly can we scale this up?" The next few hours were a blur of activity. Engineers from both species worked side by side, refining Alex's design. They needed to make it bigger, more efficient, and most importantly, they needed to make it fast. Captain James arrived just as they were preparing to test the first full-scale converter. The device now stood as tall as a person, humming with power as it connected a human fusion core to an Asteri power system. "Give me good news, Tom," the captain said, watching the preparations. "We can save them, sir," Tom replied. "But we're going to need every fusion drive Earth can spare. And we'll need to build thousands of these converters." The test began. Everyone held their breath as power flowed through the converter. The Asteri systems lit up first dimly, then with increasing brightness. Status displays that had been dark for months suddenly glowed with life. "Energy conversion at 60% efficiency," Third Light announced. "More than enough to power life support and basic systems." A cheer went up from the assembled engineers, but Tom knew this was just the beginning. They had the solution, but implementing it would be the real challenge. "Captain," he said, turning to James, "I need you to contact Earth. We need every factory that can work with high-energy systems, and we need volunteers, lots of them. This is going to be the biggest engineering project in human history." James nodded, already reaching for his communicator. "You'll have it. Earth's factories are already retooling. We're not letting these people die, not when we can help them." Tom looked at the successful converter, then at the schematic showing thousands of stranded ships. They had a mountain to climb, but for the first time since the crisis began, he knew they could do it. Humanity's primitive technology was about to save an advanced civilization. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The Earth's orbital shipyards had never seen such activity. Hundreds of ships filled the space around the planet, their hulls reflecting sunlight as they loaded supplies and equipment. Engineer Linda Martinez watched from the command center of Orbital Station 1, coordinating the massive rescue operation. "Status report," she called out, her voice carrying across the busy control room, where humans worked alongside Asteri coordinators. "First wave of converter-equipped ships is ready for launch," her assistant reported. "We've got 50 vessels prepared. Each one can help retrofit 3 Asteri ships per day." Linda did the math quickly in her head. It wasn't enough. With thousands of ships to save and life support systems failing daily, they needed to move faster. The main screen showed feeds from Jupiter, where the massive Asteri fleet hung in space like a field of dying stars. Some ships were already dark, their crews evacuated to other vessels that still had functioning life support. Each dark ship felt like a personal failure to Linda. "What's the status on the Asian Federation's contribution?" she asked, turning to the global coordination screen. "Their factories are running at maximum capacity. They've converted their entire fusion reactor production line to make converters. European Union is doing the same. African Alliance is sending up their entire space fleet to help with installations." For the first time in history, Earth's nations had united without hesitation or argument. The sight of millions of refugees, even alien ones, had struck a chord in the human heart. A warning light flashed on the main display. Another Asteri ship had just lost primary life support. "Redirect Rescue Team 7 to these coordinates," Linda ordered, marking the struggling vessel. "Get those people out of there." The Asteri coordinator beside her, named Star Watcher, touched her arm gently. "3 more ships are showing critical power failures. We can't evacuate them all fast enough." Linda slammed her fist on the console. "We're not losing any more ships. Not one." She opened a channel to the engineering teams. "This is Control. I need construction crews to work in double shifts. We don't stop until every converter is built and installed." The response was immediate. Crews that had already worked 12 hours straight volunteered for more. Engineers who had been sleeping got up and returned to their stations. Humanity was pushing itself to the limit. In space, the first wave of rescue ships reached the Asteri fleet. Human vessels, small compared to the alien ships, but bristling with newly installed equipment, began their work. Teams of engineers in spacesuits moved between ships, installing converters as fast as they could while being careful not to make mistakes. Linda watched the progress indicators. Each green light meant another ship saved, another 1,000 aliens who would live to see another day. But the red warning lights kept appearing faster than the green ones. "Ma'am," her assistant called out, "President's office is on the line. They want to know if we need more resources." "Tell them we need everything," Linda replied without hesitation. "Every fusion drive, every engineer, every ship that can fly. And we need them now." The next few hours were a blur of activity. More ships arrived from Earth, carrying crews and equipment. The first successfully converted Asteri vessels began helping with the rescue, their crews working alongside humans to save their people. But time was running out. Life support failures were spreading through the fleet like a disease. The race between salvation and disaster was measured in minutes and seconds. Linda hadn't slept in 2 days, running on coffee and determination. Star Watcher hadn't left her side, coordinating with their own people, their silver skin pale with exhaustion. "Look," Star Watcher said suddenly, pointing to the display. The number of green lights had finally started to outpace the red ones. They were gaining ground. Linda allowed herself a small smile. "We're not done yet, but we're going to make it." She looked at the massive operation unfolding before her, humans and aliens working together, pushing themselves beyond their limits to save lives. This was humanity at its best, she thought. This was what they could do when they really tried. All teams, she broadcast, keep going. We've got people to save. The race continued, but now they could see the finish line. They just had to reach it in time. Officer Mike Anderson knew something was wrong the moment he entered the converter production facility in Nevada. The night shift had reported unusual access attempts in the computer systems, and now strange readings were coming from the testing area. "Security team, with me," he ordered, leading his group through the massive factory floor. Around them, half-finished converters waited to be completed, each one representing lives that could be saved. The first explosion rocked the building just as they reached the main testing chamber. "Everyone down," Mike shouted, pulling his team behind some heavy equipment. Through the smoke, he could see dark figures moving, placing more explosive devices. "This is Anderson. We have intruders in Facility 7, he reported into his comm. "They're trying to destroy the converter production line." The response came quickly. "All security teams converge on Facility 7. Protect those converters at all costs." The saboteurs were well organized. They wore advanced stealth gear and moved with military precision. Mike recognized the equipment. It was military grade, which meant this wasn't just some random attack. "Pure Earth movement," he muttered. The anti-alien group had been gaining supporters ever since the rescue operation began. They believed helping the Asteri would lead to Earth being overwhelmed by alien refugees. Another explosion lit up the darkness, but this time Mike was ready. His team moved through the smoke, using their training and the facility's layout to their advantage. They couldn't let the saboteurs succeed, not with millions of lives hanging in the balance. "Team 2, cut off their escape route through the east exit," he ordered. "Team 3, protect the main production line at all costs." The firefight was brief but intense. The saboteurs clearly hadn't expected such strong resistance. As security teams flooded the facility, the attackers tried to trigger their remaining explosives. Mike saw one of them reach for a detonator. Without thinking, he tackled the man, both of them crashing into a stack of equipment. They struggled in the darkness, rolling across the floor as alarms blared around them. "Why?" Mike demanded, finally pinning the saboteur down. "Why try to stop us from saving them?" The man laughed bitterly. "Save them. They'll take over once they're back on their feet. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. We'll become their servants." From the doorway came a new voice. "You are wrong." Ambassador Gray stood there, their silver form illuminated by the emergency lights. Behind them were other Asteri, all wearing simple Earth-made work clothes, covered in grease and dirt from helping in the factory. "We have worked alongside your people," Gray continued, walking forward. "We have seen your determination, your courage, your compassion. You think we would betray such allies?" The saboteur stared as more Asteri appeared, not as superior beings, but as refugees who had been working shoulder to shoulder with humans, helping to build the devices that would save their own people. "We remember those who help us," Gray said softly, "and those who try to harm us." Security teams had secured the facility. The damage was minimal. Human construction had proven tougher than the saboteurs expected. But Mike knew this attack would have consequences. Within hours, the news spread throughout Earth and the Asteri fleet. The response surprised everyone. Instead of creating fear and division, the attack brought humans and Asteri closer together. More volunteers flooded into the production facilities. People worked double shifts, determined to show that the saboteurs didn't represent humanity. The Asteri, touched by this display of solidarity, shared more of their technical knowledge to help improve the converters. Mike stood in the repaired facility the next day, watching humans and Asteri working side by side. Ambassador Gray approached him. "Your people are remarkable," they said. "Even when some try to stop progress, others step forward to help even more." Mike nodded. "That's humanity for you. We're not perfect, but most of us try to do what's right." The production line hummed back to life, converters moving down the assembly line. The saboteurs had failed. The rescue would continue, stronger than ever. Because that's what humans do. They help, even when some say they shouldn't. They save lives, even when it's hard. They do what's right, even when others try to stop them. Space around Jupiter had become a hive of activity. Thousands of human ships moved between the stranded Asteri vessels, their crews working tirelessly to install the life-saving converters. Time was running out. More ships were losing power every hour. On the command deck of the EDF Stellar, Captain James watched the massive operation unfold. Earth had never attempted anything like this before. Every spacefaring nation had contributed their entire fleet. Even private space companies had joined in, their ships repurposed for the rescue mission. "Status report," he called out, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "We've saved 40% of the fleet," his officer reported. "But we're losing ground. The rate of life support failures is increasing." The captain frowned. They were working as fast as they could, but it wasn't enough. They needed something more, something bigger. That's when Linda's voice came through the comm. "Captain, I think we found a solution. But it's crazy." At this point, James replied, "I'll take crazy." Linda's plan was indeed unprecedented. Instead of converting ships one by one, they would create a massive power network. Human fusion drives would be linked together, feeding power through a web of converters to support multiple Asteri ships at once. "It's never been tried at this scale," Linda explained, her hologram floating above the bridge. "But the math works. If we succeed, we can save hundreds of ships at once." James looked at Ambassador Gray, who had been listening quietly. "Your people would need to trust us completely. We'd be linking your ships together in ways they were never designed for." Gray nodded solemnly. "We trust you. We have seen what humans can do. We will follow your lead." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Human ships moved into position, forming a vast geometric pattern around clusters of Asteri vessels. Engineers worked frantically to connect the massive power network, knowing they had only one chance to get it right. "All ships report ready," the comm officer announced. "Power grid is charged and standing by." James took a deep breath. If this failed, they could lose hundreds of ships in seconds. If it worked, they might just save everyone. "Begin power transfer," he ordered. The space around Jupiter lit up as energy began flowing through the network. Human fusion drives glowed bright blue, their power channeled through hundreds of converters. The web of energy spread between the ships like artificial lightning. Warning alarms blared as power levels spiked. "The network is holding," Linda reported, her voice tense. "First cluster of Asteri ships is receiving power. Life support systems are stabilizing." One by one, dying ships came back to life. Emergency lights turned from red to green. Systems that had been dark for months hummed back to power. "It's working," Gray exclaimed, watching as their people's ships brightened across the fleet. "The power transfer is successful." But they weren't done yet. For the next 12 hours, teams worked to expand the network, bringing more ships into the power grid. Human engineers and Asteri technicians worked side by side, pushing both technologies to their limits. Finally, as the last ship was connected, Linda's tired voice came through. "All ships are powered. Life support is stable across the fleet. We did it." A cheer went up across every ship, human and Asteri alike. They had achieved the impossible. Not a single ship had been lost in the final push. Captain James watched as the combined fleet glowed with shared power, human and alien technology working together in perfect harmony. It was beautiful, in its way, a physical demonstration of what cooperation could achieve. Ambassador Gray touched his shoulder gently. "Your people have saved us all. How can we ever repay such a debt?" James smiled. "By remembering that when different species work together, there's no problem we can't solve." The massive power grid continued to pulse with energy, keeping 2 million Asteri alive. It wasn't just a technical achievement. It was proof that humanity could rise above its differences when lives were at stake. They had done more than save a stranded fleet. They had shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of when they worked together. 1 year had passed since the Great Rescue. The Jupiter shipyards, once a scene of desperate activity, now bustled with a different kind of energy. Human and Asteri ships moved together in coordinated patterns, their crews working on something unprecedented. The first joint space station built by both species. Captain James stood at the observation deck, watching the construction. Beside him, Ambassador Gray pointed to a newly installed section of the station. "The quantum communications array is online," Gray said. "We can now reach other species in the galaxy. They're all asking the same question. How did a young species like humanity manage to save our entire fleet?" James smiled. The rescue operation had changed everything. The Asteri, grateful for humanity's help, had shared some of their technology. But they didn't simply hand it over. They worked with humans to adapt it safely, teaching as they went. "The latest reports from Earth are positive," James said. "The new hybrid power systems are reducing pollution by 80%, and the medical technologies your people shared have already cured 3 major diseases." But the greatest changes weren't technological. Humanity had learned that they could unite for a common cause. The old rivalries between nations seemed less important now that they had seen what cooperation could achieve. In orbit around Earth, the first Asteri Human Academy had opened its doors. Young people from both species studied together, learning from each other's strengths. Human creativity and problem-solving mixed with Asteri technical knowledge, creating new solutions no one had thought possible. "The other galactic species are arriving next week," Gray mentioned. "They want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth." That was perhaps the most surprising outcome. Humanity's rescue of the Asteri fleet had caught the attention of the wider galaxy. Earth was no longer seen as a primitive backwater, but as a world of resourceful problem solvers who could achieve the impossible. Down on Earth, cities had changed. Asteri architecture blended with human designs, creating beautiful new structures that combined the best of both worlds. In return, the Asteri had embraced human art, music, and culture, finding beauty in what they once considered primitive. "Remember when we first found your fleet?" James asked. "Some people thought we were too primitive to help." Gray nodded. "We were wrong. Your primitive technology saved us precisely because it was simple and reliable. We had become too dependent on advanced systems. You taught us the value of keeping things simple." The observation deck filled with more people, humans and Asteri working together on the station's next phase. There was no distinction between them now, no separation. They were just people, working together to build something better. A small ship passed by the window, carrying a group of children, both human and Asteri, on their way to a learning expedition. They waved excitedly at the observation deck, their differences forgotten in their shared excitement. "The galaxy's changing," James observed. "And it started here, with a rescue that everyone said was impossible." The Asteri fleet still orbited Jupiter, but they weren't stranded anymore. Many had chosen to stay, working with humans to build something new. Others had taken human crews with them to explore the galaxy, spreading the story of Earth's great rescue. "The future is bright," Gray said, watching the construction continue. "Together, we can achieve things neither of our species could do alone." As if to emphasize the point, a new ship emerged from Earth's atmosphere. It was the first of its kind, a vessel built by both species, combining human ingenuity with Asteri technology. It represented everything they had learned from each other. Captain James watched it rise, remembering the desperate days of the rescue. They had saved more than lives. They had shown what humanity could be at its best: understanding, helpful, resourceful, and brave. The legacy of the Great Rescue would echo through the galaxy for generations to come, not just as a story of salvation, but as proof that when different species worked together, anything was possible. And it had all started with a simple choice: to help those in need, no matter how different they might be. That was humanity's true legacy to the galaxy. Not their technology or their strength, but their heart.